we've built a lot of friendships with a lot of these people, and I could go through the list, but you probably know the names as well as I do, that they started off coming on once and now we've become friends. They've been on 10 plus times. They stayed at our home. We've done runs with them. There's been some people we've never met, but we have a virtual relationship that we call friends. And so I think that's the posse. Don't forget who brought you to the dance. And we never forget that. We're very little talent, very little few things to share worth listening to, but the guests are what make the podcast. We're so grateful for smart people that are willing to come on and help share their information with us. And so we'll never forget the posse for that reason. And the same thing goes for runs. There isn't a single long run race that isn't completed because of a posse, whether they're the crew that you never knew you had, they're at an aid station that you didn't even know the name of, or whether they're a pacer or just a fellow runner that you met. You all become united as one, and they're your posse, and great friendships are created when there's great difficulty. And when things are hard, people they bind together and you make great relationships.
You'll never attain great success solo, right? Mm. Whether it's in life, whether it's in running. And Don's mentioned that recently on a podcast, that in a run, even if it's a race, you can't do it all on your own. And I remember one of the stories of Don's that I just love is he went down to run the Angeles Crest 100, and he had flown down to LA and he had rented a car, and he got to the starting line and he realized Angeles Crest is a point-to-point race. And as he got out of his car getting ready to start the race 5 minutes before the race starts, he realized, how am I supposed to get my car to the finish line? And someone, he went over and he says, hey, I need somebody is there anybody who can drive this rental car to the finish line for me? Hands went up. Yep, we can do it. Don't worry about it. And sure enough, he finished the race, and there the car was. So even in that situation where he went there without a running partner or really knowing, too many people at that race, he wasn't able to complete the race on his own. And I think that's a life lesson. That's how we become better humans.
And maybe, just maybe, even better people. Just maybe.
Maybe is you can't accomplish the best top of the tier success alone. You have to have help.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to ask for it, and sometimes it's offered.
All right. Agree. Just kidding. We'll do a countdown. All right. Welcome to the Renegade Podcast. As always, I am your co-host, Runkle Mark.
And I'm Todd, Mayor Run Tet.
And before we get started, as always, we are unofficially endorsed by our favorite, Athletic Brew. Whether you're running by yourself or with your crew, there's an Athletic Brew for you.
Is that a Canadian brew? Is that exclusive to Canada?
Oh, good question. I don't think so.
Actually, it's an American brew. I think it's out of on the East Coast. And they make a really good non-alcoholic
You've been sneaking
brew.
it across the border?
Absolutely. or we've been recorded. No, actually, no, sir. No, nothing to declare.
Not at all. No.
Well, on the Renegade Podcast, our mission is to explore that human connection with running through like amazing guests, some fun stories, and our own experiences. And for those listening tonight on this episode, if you're a runner, if you're a trail runner, there's a good chance that you've heard of Trail Runner Nation. And if you haven't, it's most likely maybe because you're too much time on the trails running solo, or you could be a little bit too new to this running thing. But in either case, have no fear. And joining us on this episode are the OGs of trail running.
And you don't mean the old guys, right? No.
No, the original gangsters of trail running and trail running podcasting. We have Warr and Don Freeman, and they have the #1 trail running podcast, I believe, in the world. Many episodes, I think 666 episodes, guys, that you have out there.
Wow.
I like your math. We need to use Todd's math more, Don. I like that he says we're number one. I don't know where you're getting that, but I'll support it.
At least number one in our hearts too, right?
There you go.
That's right. And you know, when you look back, you had a 12-year, 13-year podcasting career. You've covered so many topics, introduced us to so many guest concepts. It's amazing what has branched out from a lot of the stories that started on your show. And we kind of feel like, you know, Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World when they meet Alice Cooper. It's kind of like,
yeah, we'll stay and hang around with you, with Alice Cooper. We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're scum! We suck!
we're not worthy.
We're scum. We're scum. We suck.
But, you know, for those who know Scott and Don, and they can hear their voice, you know that they're good guys, and they're never going to turn down a trail run. So we sent out an email saying, hey, would you like to come on the Renegade podcast? Right away, they said, we'd love to help you out. And that kind of speaks to the spirit of trail running and why we love to run. The stories, just helping each other. Sometimes we're running long distances out there. We're out there by ourselves, and it's good to have a crew. So thank you guys. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And we're going to have some fun. We thought to explore your running experiences, your trail running experiences, and then, you know, maybe layer in the podcasting experience.
Well, so we appreciate you having us on. You know, Scott and I looked at each other and thought, you know, what do we have to offer them? and you'll soon find out why we have guests on our podcast, because we don't have a lot to offer. So, you know, this is a big gamble for us, and really more a gamble for you. So we'll see how
this may be the shortest episode in your library, guys.
You never know. But I got a good feeling that we'll have some good laughs. And you know what? Like, maybe even to start is I've been listening to you for probably 5-6 years, listening to all the episodes. And what I found amazing was, in my mind, I had a picture of what Scott and Don look like. And before you released your YouTube episodes and whatnot, I was like, when I saw you the very first one, I'm like, wait a second, I thought Don was Scott and Scott was Don. I don't know. And then Mark mentioned that today too. He's like, I when I first thought it, I thought they were the other way around. So I don't know if you ever heard that before.
I'll answer to that, because I did the editing at first. That was my role in the beginning. And I would listen to us and I'd say, gosh, I sound a lot like Scott, and Scott sounds a lot like me. I wonder how people tell us apart.
It's like those old married couples that just kind of start sounding similar. Don and I spent a lot of time on the trails talking to each other before we started podcasting. And so I think we're like that old married couple that just start. I mean, my pace is the same pace as his pace. And, you know, our strides are the same, even though my legs are half as long. And maybe we sound a little bit similar.
So Scott grew a beard so you could tell us apart. That's helped us out.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it here, so we'll see if we get there as well. But so just for our listeners too as well, how did you both meet and then, you know, decide to pull together a podcast and everything else that went with it back in 2011?
Well, Scott's pointing to me. Have you guys? This isn't me sidestepping the question, but have you
yes,
guys?
It is.
Have you guys developed some hand signals between one another? Like, I've got the next question, because we're all at our individual locations. We're talking on a shared platform. We're using Riverside, and so the four of us are on the screen and we're looking at one another. And when Scott and I have small hand signals, like, I got this question, you got this one, I got a little bit on this, you know. So have you developed kind of a rhythm back and forth?
Absolutely not yet. We're still trying to work on like not talking over each other, just, you know, what those cues are, just finding out where those gaps are in between conversation. And so still a work in progress, I'd say, on our side.
See how he sidestepped the question? I knew he would.
Because I sidestepped it because he pointed at me right when he said, I'm not going to handle this one. And he threw it over, and I was like, what am I going to do now? But we have found that little exchange of small hand signals back and forth really helps keep the rhythm and the momentum. And he's still sidestepping the question.
Even though I called him out, he's still sidestepping the question.
So So when you have two people, when you have one person just on a podcast, and you've got to carry all the water. I've got to ask the question. I got to listen to the answer. I've got to come up with the next question. What did he just or she just say? I don't know. Now where am I? I hope that I don't ask the question. They just answer because I'm not even listening. So those are some of the things that happen. But when you have two people,
You can edit this whole thing out, right?
this is good.
This is the goal. This is
there's
what
no
we want
edits.
to hear.
There's no edits.
Yeah, this is like going on a trail and you're telling the guy about the puddles. You just got to go through them, not around them. And so when you have two people, the person that puts up their finger, now the other person can just relax. It's like, okay, that guy's got the next question, and you just relax and enjoy the conversation, or at least you can, pretend to enjoy it. And so two people, what a key, the real benefit. What was the question, Scott? You want to answer it?
I'd like to revise my comment earlier. This may be your longest podcast.
So we had a mutual friend that was a runner, and I started becoming friends with him running when I said he had said, "Oh, I ran a marathon," and to be social, I said, "Oh, I've always wanted to run a marathon." I didn't want to run a marathon. That was the craziest thing I ever heard of, but he's such a nice guy that I got sucked into it. Next thing I know, it's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm standing out on a corner with a pair of shorts on, and I start running. Scott ended up with a similar type of thing. This individual had such charisma and passion for the sport that I think he got sucked in, and that was our mutual friend. And then we became running buddies from that point, Scott and I. So that's where it all started some 20 years ago.
And to the community, I mean, he embodied trail running, right? I mean, he was always inviting people out to the trail. Hey, come run with me. Come run with me. Let's go run together. I mean, he really wanted other people to experience the joy that he got from running. And I don't know how many people got into running. I mean, us, but I'm sure there's probably dozens of people that are runners because of Jeff.
That's amazing. I find that Todd is that person for me in terms of the person who started running and then slowly went into whether the 5, the 10, and then the marathons and whatnot. So I've known him since the beginning of his journey through running. And for me, being the noob, starting only within the last year, I am just learning as much as I can, trying to absorb and hopefully not injure myself on the way. So fingers crossed.
Well, you know what there, Don? Like, Scott's usually the one that has the golden nuggets. I think you just gave us a golden nugget, a Don golden nugget. The hand signals.
My first.
You heard it here on the first Don golden nugget. Maybe you touched on something, and maybe this is when you're a runner, when you actually create another runner. Kind of like you're a leader when you create another leader. Maybe that's the thing. Like when you can actually transfer running to somebody else and develop that, and you can see that grow and start to take hold in somebody, and it's just fun to see. I love watching Mark and his running journey, and it makes me smile. Actually, even more than running by myself. I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cult, actually, right? Is it a cult? I never owned this many running shoes ever, and all of a sudden, it's just started to happen. So here we are.
Well, do you have a hard time throwing away a pair of running shoes?
Yes.
It's like, what, this shoe has been loyal. It's been through some hard times. It's taken me through some hot days and some points where I thought, I'll be lucky to even get back. And it's hard to turn your back on a shoe like that and just say goodbye. So you'll end up, Mark, with a closet full, a garage full of shoes that will never be worn again. But how do you get rid of them? I don't know.
I was hoping you're going to provide an answer for that. Like, is there a place where what I've seen some people do? Well, no, that's more with shirts. They make like a quilt or something like that. But I don't think there's a thing that you can do with shoes. I mean, you could lace them all together and hang them in a tree, maybe. I don't know. Still have yet to figure it out.
There's some services out there where you can donate them to a cause somewhere and give that shoe a second life. And if you want to, get into the soul, no pun intended, of the shoe and just move it on to the next runner somewhere.
Oh, that's great. That's something I should look into.
Yeah.
I actually have another question with regards to how things were back when you started the podcast. Like, what was the podcasting environment back then? I mean, now things are totally different. There's different platforms, technology. There's a lot of different podcasts out there as well. But I imagine back when you started, there weren't as many. You were the trailblazers of podcasts for, especially for trail running. So, what was that like? Just starting something.
It was so early in the day back when you're talking about as OGs. We would write the script down and then show up to people's homes and then read it for them because there wasn't any type of platform to deliver it. I mean, we've been around a long time.
Yeah. Wow.
Scott, you answer it for real.
Podcasts, not a lot of people even knew what podcasts were 13 years ago when we started. And it was a matter of necessity. Don and I, we don't always run together. We're not attached to the hip, but there's a lot of times that you spend alone running. And I just got sick of music. I'm sure Don was the same way. And, you could download audiobooks. And then all of a sudden I heard about this podcast thing. And we thought, I'm going to try to find some running podcasts. And we really couldn't find anything that was appealing or had any intrinsic value besides just somebody dribbling on. And, I started running after Don. And as I started running with Don, he would tell me stories about back in the day. See, he's much older than I am. And he would tell me about Dana Gard and what he learned from Dana Gard and what he learned from Bill Finkbeiner and what he learned from all these different just iconic trail runners about how to be a better trail runner. And I learned from Don what he learned from them, who probably learned from someone else. And we thought maybe that's a good podcast. And that's what we've tried to do for the last 13 years is just share that knowledge with the rest of the community. It may be redundant. It may be something that most people know, but I think it's good to share the information, Todd, like you got with Mark, bringing him into the buying a real expensive running shoes and starting this habit. There's things that you can teach him and get him excited, and I think that's what we tried to do with our podcast. But there really wasn't that many podcasts. Now there's a ton of trail running podcasts out there, and they're all kind of skewed a little bit differently, that have different focus and stuff like that. And I think that's a lot of fun. We listen to a lot of them.
Yeah. Like I'm with you, like with the podcasting, it's kind of almost, there's two aspects of it. The selfish aspect is you get to like talk and ask questions and learn from the people who are doing big things. It's fantastic. Like, where else do you actually have a front row seat, and where else would we have the chance to be able to sit down with you fine gentlemen and ask you questions and learn from you without this medium? And so on a selfish level, it's so much fun. Like we love to talk about running. We love trail running. It's really great. And then to be able to share that with others, that was the one thing I saw with your podcasts and with the guests that you always brought on. You mentioned that they might have been a simpler concept, but it always blossomed into something that was funny, that you learned a lot more than you would have, and just taught us all a lot of stuff. That's what I love about it. And Don,
you saw my finger go up and you saw that you knew that
I'm learning.
I had something to add. My problem is sometimes I wait too long and then I forget what I was going to say. But I've wanted to say this for a while, is that I think that it's a real lost art, just a conversation. And I won't say it's real artful. We're not super skilled at it, but I think as humans, we all are. We sat around the fire, we exchanged ideas, we talked about a hunt, we talked about a number of things about survival and relationships. And I think that it calls to our DNA, who we are. So I think these moments that you sit down for 45 minutes to an hour and just knock a conversation around is just wonderful and works. And that's why I enjoy it so much. And it comes natural. And I think it's comfortable for the listeners because they join in the campfire conversation. And when you get to sit down with somebody and just have an hour just to talk, when do you get that? Whenever do you get it? You get it on the trail a bit when you go on a long run. And that's what's magical about it, because you get those moments of either solitude or companionship, and you trust one another. But I think the podcast and conversation is a lost art, and we're all rediscovering it together.
And Todd, to your point, it's actually funny from a selfish standpoint who we've been able to talk to and who you will be able to talk to. Our very first episode we recorded was with Jeff Rose. And I don't know if that name means anything. Back 13, 14 years ago, he was top of he was the fastest guy around, and he was winning all the races. And we started the podcast, and somehow I got his name or number or whatever. And I reached out and said, hey, guess what? I have a podcast. We have a podcast. Would you mind coming on and talking to us? And he said, yes. I mean, that's something that you would never do if you didn't have a podcast. You couldn't call up Killian Jornet right now and say, hey, Killian, I'd like to talk to you for an hour and have you help me with my running. It's not going to happen, right? And we've been very fortunate, I think, by saying, hey, we have a podcast. Would you like to come on our podcast? And we've had just amazing guests, as you will find. It's really quite fun.
Well, that's it. Like, the microphone really legitimate things. Sorry, it really makes things official for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think Mark just made up a new word.
Us, trying to combine things together there. But yeah, if you were asking someone to say, "Hey, you want to hang out for a beer for an hour?" You're probably going to say no, because they're like, "Who is this, psycho approaching me?" But come on to our podcast, and we'll talk about random things for an hour, and they tend to say yes. So hopefully people don't start saying no after hearing this. So. And with that, like, you've had so many, how do you figure out who you're going to have on your show next? I mean, you must have a whole team that is reaching out to folks, or is it?
We do. Dozens of office
to
people.
Make it work.
It's actually a great question. When we first started, we thought, we started writing down topics. What could we do a podcast about? And we wrote down topics. I think we came out with maybe a dozen.
Yeah.
And we thought, after that dozen, there's really not that much. That's really not that much to talk about. And, I think we can say it probably because we have short-term memories. We've done a lot of podcasts over and over again, same topics over and over again. But it's really selfish. Back to your point, Todd. If we're out on a run, Don and I do go running together quite often, and we'll be just having our normal trail conversation, and something will come up, like, hey, did you see that new stack height on that shoe? Isn't that the funniest looking shoe in the whole world? And we start talking about shoes, and we go, you know what? Who knows a lot about shoes? Maybe we should talk to somebody who knows about shoes. Let's talk about, these new super shoes. What's the deal with that? Let's see if we can get an engineer to come on and tell us why these things cost, $1,200 a pair. And I think that it just comes from conversations that Don and I have. We've also been fortunate enough to be around a lot enough that, some people do reach out to us. We have some listeners that offer up great suggestions for episodes, or we have authors of great books. I just picked up one. We just published an episode like 2 weeks ago by Sid Garza Hillman called Ultra Running for Normal People. It's a really a cool little book, quick read, and he reached out to us, or his publisher reached out to us, and so I think some things come to us. But a lot of it just comes from experiences that we've had. In fact, one of them, I can give you an example. Have you ever had one of those little TENS? What do you call them? TENS meters, TENS units. What are they called, Don?
Transcutaneous electric nerve stimulation. It's an acronym, TENS.
A TENS unit, is that what you call it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I had an injury and I started using one of these. Don sent me an Amazon link to this TENS unit, cost $39 or something. And I was using it because I had tried everything else, and I think it worked. I mean, my injury got better, and I said we should have an expert come on. Don is an expert. He uses TENS units quite a bit in his career. And I thought, that's just something we need to find an expert on TENS units and have them come on and tell us what are the benefits. That hasn't happened yet. We haven't done that episode, but that's just an example of how things come up. It's, stuff that happens in our own lives or something we hear or something we read.
Yeah, you may think that Scott and I are really the only two at Trail Runner Nation, but it's not. There's a silent third partner that we have. And that partner is the why, what drives us. It has a strong vote. It aligns itself with whichever partner. If Scott and I disagree, he will saddle up next to the why and bring that in and then have the winning vote of what we're going to do. And I can do the same. And the why is this topic or this conversation going to help people become better runners and enjoy the sport and endure longer? And if the topic fits that, then it qualifies. So the why has really been and it came from this book, Simon Sinek, It All Starts With Why. And it's been probably our best partner, and one that's never let us down, and one that served both of us. And we hope that it serves the audience consistently. And, it may disagree with my opinion or Scott's opinion, but we've agreed that the why is the deciding vote. And I think it's a healthy way to run a podcast, a relationship, a business. Does it fit your why? And don't let your why get lost. Keep it.
See, I thought, I hear you say that, and what came to mind initially was that you're going to say the wives, and I was like, oh, we have the same kind of third. We bounce ideas off them all the time, and they're like, no, don't do that, don't say that.
Don't want to hear it.
It's like you sound like a 14-year-old boy. Don't broadcast that out there. So no, but all kidding aside, I think that's a really great reason. And
our wives don't know we have a podcast.
The Renegade Podcast wouldn't be possible without our listeners and friends of the podcast. And we have a great friend of the podcast, Path Projects. If you're looking for the best running gear, look no further than Path Projects. They make all the great running gear, from hats to shorts to shell jackets to t-shirts. They are always innovating. And there's two things that I love. Their most recent innovation, the Graves PX shell jacket. It's made from their custom Torre material, the same material used in their best-selling Graves PX running shorts. It's lightweight, wind and water resistant. It's fabulous. And it's actually more breathable than a rain jacket. And then the other thing that you can always find me wearing, I love their Tensolite t-shirts. This is a soft material. It's lightweight. It's got anti-odor resistance. Hey, it looks fabulous. Great cuts. So check them out and use the code RUNEGADE10 for 10% off your order. Don, you touched on something, and I'll bring it back. It's starting with the why. And when you kick off your episode, you talk about you want to help people be better runners, and also hopefully maybe be better people. And you know what? There's no better time in the world that we need folks to be better runners, but even better people. So that's a great mission, a great why to kind of share, to always set the tone. And it sets the tone for every conversation I listen to.
Well, I'll tell you, Todd, why I like you so much is because that is Scott saying, and he's the one that says it every time. And I used to roll my eyes at it. And
he used to make so much fun of me. Better human beings? That's stupid. Why do you say that? We need to take that out. And I go, no, I think it really has some resonance with our audience. And it fit the why, right?
Yes.
And finally, I think Don's coming around. He still rolls his eyes every time I say that, and that's why I have to say it. He can't say it with a straight face.
But see, it was transferring over. It transferred over into Don, so I heard it in Don's voice. So it's slowly but surely,
and it's working.
I love it. I helped to give it. I kind of embellished it a bit when I said, and just maybe, Scott, even better people. So you can hear the sarcasm being delivered through the microphone back at him when I just say, just maybe, right, Scott? Just maybe.
Yep.
Proof of concept. I've seen it in Todd. He's become an okay runner and an even better person over the last several years of listening to your podcast.
But it's true, right?
To that point, if you've been a trail runner for any given amount of length, most of those people are not jerks. You know, they've learned and they've been punished out on the trail. They've been humbled, and very rarely do I run into someone that's been out running for a long, many years that is just complete butthead.
Yeah.
And so
Can
I
you
think
use
that running
word? Can you say that on your podcast?
Absolutely.
We'll ask the editor afterwards.
Right.
We'll keep that in there.
Well, you touch on something there. So it's Trail Runner Nation. It's not Runner Nation. Because sometimes if on the runner side, the road runners out there, they can carry a persona and a little bit more type A, a little bit more like angst and stress out there, where when you go to a trail run, you don't see that as much. Maybe you see it at the front of the pack, but we're nowhere near the front of the pack. So we're just hanging out at the back, having a great time. But if you hang out at the back of a marathon, it's a totally different vibe. And we love that trail running vibe. It's just, it's everything.
I think it's an evolution, Todd, because most of the trail runners were or still are road runners, but they've ventured and matured. Matured into trail runners.
It's a very good word. Yes.
I hope you don't have just marathoners listen to this podcast. They may tune out or unsubscribe. Sorry.
Well, what's kind of funny too is that this actually might be an interesting segue. So we, as you know, just started this podcast where this is our 7th episode right now. And we already are starting to get some fan emails. But what kind of surprised us the other week is we got a different kind of email. And I don't know if you've ever gotten something like this before, given that a lot of these runners are very supportive and really, encouraging in that. So we actually had something that kind of stung a little bit, and we're still kind of feeling it. And I just thought it'd be kind of funny to read it. So,
all right,
this one's
this is exactly what a trail runner does, Mark. You never tell about the good things that happen. You tell about when you stubbed your toe and you did a flip and you threw up on somebody's hair, and
Scott,
that's the good story. So bring it on.
So it's brief, but it's this is from Tic Tac Tito 422.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, we know him.
We know that guy.
So previously I had my microphone positioned differently, but it's what's up with Runkle Mark's microphone positioning? Just waiting for him to roll on a flesh-toned windscreen. And I'm like, oh gosh, like what is it's kind of interesting comment. And then the other was, and what's the deal with Todd slurping? So with that, like Todd would be sipping away on tea or something. It's like, I hear more slurps than nuggets of advice. And we'll stick to the TRN podcast. Thanks for nothing. And he's like, so we thought that, it'd be kind of timely to read this to you on here, but it's something we're still working through. And Tito, if you're out there, we will improve.
Thanks for listening, Tito. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I don't know if he's more of a road runner than a trail runner, but we get it from everyone, I guess, now. So
hey, I will tell you, and Don and I shared with this, early on, there wasn't a whole lot of information on how to podcast, what microphones to use, what audio gear to use. And we would get that all the time, fairly good podcast, but the audio sucked. I can't make it through an episode because the audio is so bad. And we're just sitting here going, hey guys, we're doing our best. We're not professional podcasters here. We don't know what we're doing. We're just learning, give us a break. Of course you can't ever reply, right? So it's something that we've learned over time. And I told you guys before we hit record, we have a garage full of audio boards and microphones and cables out the wazoo. And we've used different platforms from Skype to Zoom. Now we're using Riverside, and there's so many different. It's come a long way. And so first, you're not the only ones that have audio issues. That's everybody has that. And secondly, you know what? If they don't like it, they can start their own podcast. Is what I.
And people do. That's why there's so many out there.
So, hey Tito, when you get a podcast, send us a link, pal.
That's right. That's right.
Tito, that was Scott. It wasn't Don. The guy with the beard.
You know, we actually got a negative comment. This was years and years ago. We went on another podcast like we're doing right now, and I unfortunately said something that I regret saying. And they didn't edit it out, and I didn't ask them to because I didn't really think it was that offensive.
It wasn't.
But we had some. My generation, the phrase that I used, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but my generation, it was just an off the cuff phrase that we used. But anyway, someone went onto our podcast account and left a nasty review saying these guys are, whatever.
Yeah.
A one-star review. I mean,
Ouch.
We were holding on to, my mom gave us a 5, my daughters gave us a 5, and that one really brought us down.
Yeah. Thanks, Grandma. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, it's tough. But you know what? We're, moving forward, and it's, positive outlook, and there's also so many other good comments that come through. So
and
we
it's
appreciate.
fun. Like, I would say, Mark, it's funny. Like, the hardest thing maybe about the podcast, we would have thought that maybe it would have been the podcast. No, recording the podcast, having guests, that's the easiest part. The hardest part was finding the name, because we ended up in YouTube jail because we picked a trademark name by accident. So we got banished from YouTube from life. So we rebranded really quick and to the Renegade Podcast a few weeks ago, and that was fun. And I like our new name better because I had a hard time saying our old name. I fumbled it, so it's usually probably a bad sign if your host can't say the podcast name.
And like you, having multiple recording gear boards in your garage, we're going to have multiple mugs from podcast names. We're on our second mug right now. I'm sure there will be a few more name changes in the future, but it's all part of it, right? It's hard to come up with an original idea anymore. So,
well, we had an idea, guys, and
Speaking of non-original ideas,
we like to. Well, we had Josh Giles on from Shama Sandals. He was on our last episode. It's getting ready to release. And his kind of story was, he mentioned that in the pre-show that he was always a fan of music, right? So someone asked James from Metallica, like, why do you make music? And he's like, well, I just love music. So I'm just playing stuff that I hear from others. And I just love music. And it got us thinking, well, you know what? We love the Trail Runner Nation podcast. There's some really cool show segments, some show topics that you had. So we went into the archives here, and this might be a terrible idea. Most likely it will be, but we'll try to we'll try to recover. Maybe you guys can help us make something out of this. So no pressure.
Oh boy.
So we went back to March 18th of 2012, and you had an episode.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
I have no idea.
You're not going to hurt us with this. This is solid gold.
It was based on a blog, so you can tell it's dated because I haven't heard a blog in probably 10 years. But it was from Will Cooper from Ultra Running Magazine. It was called 9.5 Trail Running Commandments. So were you and I think it was Faith at the time on the podcast, and you were exploring these 9.5 commandments. So we said, you know what, we'll amend it to say these are the commandments of trail running and podcasting, and then maybe get your perspective on it. It might be an utter disaster, but who knows? Like,
let's give it a whirl.
I hope you're gonna list those because I can't remember the 9.5.
Oh, we're out. We forgot that.
It's recorded, right? It's recorded. You can fix it. We're all right.
Let's
do it.
So with number 1, find new routes every day. I mean, every day. Take them. So in the world of podcasting and trail running, what does that mean now for you?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind, and I'm not sidestepping this, Scott.
Oh boy, here we go.
That's right. You see the bus coming. You're about to get hit. As soon as Scott hears one of his golden nuggets, he'll say, "You know what? I think I'm going to start running a different route. I'm going to commit to making a change in the way that I live life, and I'm going to follow that. That's what I'm going to do." And I love when he gets these golden moments, these epiphanies of how his life's going to change, and then I don't see him doing it. So.
You're my accountability department, Don.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're the one that's supposed to make sure that I do it.
So what's the question now? We're supposed to run different routes?
I have an answer.
Oh,
I have an answer. Take new routes. I will tell you, just recently, Don and I we go up and we run the same 8-9 mile loop all the time, right? I mean, we could do it with our eyes blindfolded.
And we have.
And we have at 4:30 in the morning, we've done that. But there's some interesting characters that live up in that area, Auburn, California, which is where the finish line of the Western States 100 is. And we've been very, very fortunate to go on some runs with these old timers. And when I say old timers, they're not old; they just grew up there. Matt Lambert is one of the guys that grew up there, and he said as a 12, 13-year-old kid, his parents would say, "Get out of the house on a Saturday or during the summer, get out of the house." And he and his buddies would go down into these canyons and just explore, and they wouldn't be back until dinner time, right? Well, they've taken us on some trails that are perpendicular, almost side by side, parallel to the trails that we run and know very, very well, that show us just a whole new perspective of these canyons that we run all the time. And I love it. We did a podcast a while ago about Hal Hall, he's a legend in the Tevis Cup, which is the predecessor of the Western States 100. He lives right on the Western States Trail. And we recorded the podcast, and then we went on a run and then did podcast. I can't remember. And he took us on this trail that we knew so well. And he goes, we stopped at this one juncture, and he says, right down there, probably about 100 yards, is an old locomotive engine. What? I didn't know there's a locomotive engine down there. And we didn't go down there and look at it that day. But the next run, Don and I went and we ran down that trail. And sure enough, there's this old rusted locomotive engine down there that was like within 100 yards of the trail that we run all the time. And I think that is really, really exciting to do. We went out last weekend with Matt Lambert and Hal Hall and some others, and they were, maybe I shouldn't say this since people listen to this because it's probably not.
Go ahead and say it. Oh yeah, go ahead and say it.
They were cutting a new trail. They're creating a new trail that goes from point A to point B because the old way was like a paved road, and they wanted to have it a single track trail. And so they were going in with some shears and some chainsaws and cutting away some of the brush and creating a new trail. And it's just fascinating. So not only should you take new trails, but maybe you should make new trails.
Ooh, nice save.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe
Very
not.
insightful.
The Forest Service, I will deny that I ever said that.
That's very insightful and very deep. I love it. Yeah. So
and at this rate, this show will be about a week long. That was just one, Scott. We've got to shorten these up.
I'm not done with my answer.
Oh.
That was just running. You mentioned running and podcasting.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done, and Don is a very, very creative person, and we're always trying to change things up and try to do interesting things. We haven't done this for a while, but we used to do a holiday game show episode.
Okay.
And we would put a lot of time. It was really the only time we really prepared for these podcasts. And we would do just fun game show episodes. We started out with something called drop bag or grab bag with different episode or different titles. And we said, no, let's not call it grab bag. Let's call it drop bag because that's trail oriented. And then we did audio magazine, which was the same thing as drop bag and grab bag. And then we did a recent one with Alex Hutchinson. I don't know if we titled it, but it was basically the same thing. So we sometimes we just change the titles to make it sound new and fun and exciting. But we're always looking for new ways to approach the podcast episode rather than not just be the same boring. Hi, I'm Scott. Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to Trail Runner Nation. Hey, how did you start running? Oh, really? What do you enjoy about running? Oh, that's me too. Where do you like to run? Oh, that sounds really pretty. That gets kind of boring.
That does. And I think you nailed it because, the number one commandment is that's the number one. So there you go to keep it fresh.
Oh, we're just on one. We're just on the first one.
Yeah. It's
Okay, Don, you got the next one.
No, they're only covering one based on that answer. The one that we're going to cover.
One per episode. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, one per episode. Well, the second one, it was called Cycle Your Training, Plan Your Peaks and Valleys. What's that mean to running, and what's that mean to podcasting?
Okay, well, the one thing that I do love is just trying to think on your feet. We played we had this one set of podcasts that we did the dictionary game, and I think it was with AJW, and you'd thumb through the dictionary, you'd stop it, you'd pick out a word, and then you'd have to make up a definition based on running, so whatever it might be. I mean, it might be, what's the word, Scott? He planted a word for me to say somewhere in the podcast, but I can't even pronounce it, so I can't do it. So
let me stop. Let me pause you right there. So Don and I, in order to make things new and fresh and fun, before we got on this podcast, I called him up and I said, hey, to make it kind of a challenge for you and me, I said, I'm going to text you a word. It's a random word, and you have to use it during the podcast episode. And obviously, he wasn't supposed to tell you that that's what we were doing. But the problem is, you know what the word is, right?
Serendipity.
Serendipity.
But
so he failed.
A very good movie too, Serendipity.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Don. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's what that was.
So the highs and lows, peaks and valleys. So I love thinking on the feet, and I'm trying to think about as far as how do I relate that to running and to podcasting. Well, there's the highs and lows of any run, and I think that's what brings us back, is coming back from the dead. Let me hear your story about that run, about how hot it was, how bad you were, how you couldn't eat, how the cramp put you on the ground, and what you finished. How did you do it? And I think the highs and lows are what bring us to the sport. And well, I mean, just the highs and lows of a podcast, you can just tune in and hear many of those. So we've got plenty of them,
especially the lows.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that's what people want. They want
but you go low, then it doesn't make, you don't have to go much higher to get high. I mean, the lower you go, you climb up just a little bit and you're elevated.
It's a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think that's what that means.
Awesome. So number 3, don't forget your posse. Run with them regularly. Swap stories. They keep you grounded. How does that apply to both? Do you have, you've met so many people over the years with podcasts too as well, and bringing on friends and acquaintances. What does that mean for you now?
Yeah, well, we've created we've kind of gathered, sorry to jump in on you, Scott, because I want to get this before you do, because you'll say it and then I won't get to that we've built a lot of friendships with a lot of these people, and I could go through the list, but you probably know the names as well as I do, that they started off coming on once and now we've become friends. They've been on 10 plus times. They stayed at our home. We've done runs with them. There's been some people we've never met, but we have a virtual relationship that we call friends. And so I think that's the posse. Don't forget who brought you to the dance. And we never forget that. We're very little talent, very little few things to share worth listening to, but the guests are what make the podcast. We're so grateful for smart people that are willing to come on and help share their information with us. And so we'll never forget the posse for that reason. And the same thing goes for runs. There isn't a single long run race that isn't completed because of a posse, whether they're the crew that you never knew you had, that are at an aid station that you didn't even know the name of, or whether they're a pacer or just a fellow runner that you met. You all become united as one, and they're your posse, and great friendships are created when there's great difficulty. And when things are hard, people they bind together and you make great relationships.
You'll never attain great success solo, right? Whether it's in life, whether it's in running. And Don's mentioned that recently on a podcast, that in a run, even if it's a race, you can't do it all on your own. And I remember one of the stories of Don's that I just love is he went down to run the Angeles Crest 100, and he had flown down to LA and he had rented a car, and he got to the starting line and he realized Angeles Crest is a point-to-point race. And as he got out of his car, getting ready to start the race 5 minutes before the race starts, he realized, how am I supposed to get my car to the finish line? and someone, he went over and he says, hey, I need somebody to, is there anybody who can drive this rental car to the finish line for me? Hands went up. Yep, we can do it. Don't worry about it. And sure enough, he finished the race, and there the car was. So even in that situation where he went there without a running partner or really knowing, too many people at that race, he wasn't able to complete the race on his own. And I think that that's a life lesson. That's how we become better human.
And maybe, just maybe, even better people. Just
maybe is you can't accomplish the best top of the tier success alone. You have to have help.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to ask for it, and sometimes it's offered.
And it's more fun. It's more fun to do it with somebody else.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at another great, I'm going to, Scott, another golden nugget for the golden nugget sack.
Yeah.
Another one.
I need to get an audio file that sounds like a golden nugget dropping in a bag. I'm going to work on that for next episode, Don.
Good.
Okay, so we got.
I hope you can use it.
We got number 4 here. Number 4 is lay low every once in a while. I'm not talking for a couple days or weeks. I'm talking about a couple months. Find something else to do. What's that mean to you guys?
Go ahead, Don.
Well, I mean, to take a break, to energize yourself both emotionally and physically. You can't keep doing hard stuff all the time and not have it put a real demand on you. You've got to let ligaments, tendons, joints, muscles recover. You've got to let the little spark that's inside of you that gets you up in the morning and gets you to the finish line or get you through those hard times, that needs to come back. So get away, lay low, and then come back fresh with the vigor of a new enthusiast getting to do something fun. And to miss it a little bit, to pull away and want to come back, you've got to experience a little bit of missing it for you to truly appreciate it, I think. And so I think it's okay to lay low and hope that you do miss it so that you come back excited. So you got to lay low sometimes so you realize how much you love it.
It's excellent.
I think of another great runner that we don't really hear his name a whole lot anymore is Anton Krupicka, Tony Krupicka. He's won, probably all of the races, all the important races, right? And he finally took a break. I don't know if he was forced to because of injury or whatnot, but now he's out there doing biking, cross country adventure biking, and he's found a new passion. I don't know whether he'll come back to running. I think he did recently, and just came back and ran a race. I don't know. I don't follow him that much, but I think that like Don said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, now that's a tough balance, right? Because if you're running and you're training for a long race, whatever that distance is, half marathon, or beyond, you have to dedicate yourself and be consistent and disciplined about your regular training. And so there's a balance. You have to do that until you reach your goal, but then give yourself permission. You need that for your stress hormones to recalibrate, for your muscles. Like Don said, I mean, Don knows a lot about health and the human body, and you can't stress your body consistently year after year and be able to do it decades from now. And that's really, at least my goal is I want to be able to do this, until I'm in a walker or a wheelchair next year.
And we want you guys to be able to do that too. That's excellent. Excellent.
So the next one I have is commit to a goal, to an event, any event, preferably one that inspires you. If you can't, rest easy. It's not the end of the world. But if you can, smile and enjoy the ride. What does that mean to you?
I think it means something to me. Am I first this time, Don?
Oh yeah, because I'm drawing a blank. So
okay.
Yes.
I think that means something different to me now than it did 6, 7, 8 years ago. 6, 7, 8 years ago, I had to have a race on the calendar to motivate me to get out and do the training. And that's what the goal was, is to be successful at that race, whatever that success means. And I had a definition for my own personal well-being is I wanted to be successful at this race. And so I'd always have a race on the calendar. In recent years, starting even probably before the COVID pandemic, I found that I didn't need to race, that wasn't the motivator anymore, that I really enjoy just going out and being on the trail, whether it's alone by myself or with a friend, Don, or with multiple friends in a small group, or going to a race, not racing, but participating as an aid station worker or in some other capacity. I think that I find more joy in that respect now. I keep on saying I need to sign up for a race, and Don has been joking with me. Andy Jones Wilkins has been prodding me. You need to sign up for a race, Scott. And I think I do, but that's not the reason why I run anymore. It used to be. Yeah, that used to be the motivation, is to get the belt buckle or get the medal or get the finisher's t-shirt or whatever. And that's not the case for me anymore. I just enjoy being out there. I mentioned Matt Lambert. Don knows Matt, local runner, and he's probably one of the happiest runners I've ever met. He's always smiling, and I think maybe he raced. I don't think I've ever seen him at a race, but he's always out on the trail running and pruning and taking care of the trail, but he always has a smile on his face. And I think that he has inspired me to just enjoy running and being out there. Long answer.
No,
sorry.
that was a
Don,
good answer.
Don needed a little extra time.
No, I had it. It's somewhere in the middle there, and it kind of slipped away. But it was profound, and it was worth sharing. I just hope it comes back at some point. But I will share this parallel thought that came that a successful race. When Scott mentioned that, a successful race, and success there can be 100 racers that signed up. There are 100 bibs, and they can all have a successful race. Maybe the race of their life. You don't have to stand on a podium to have a great race. If you execute your race well, then you've won. In fact, the person that comes in last could have had a successful race, and the person that standing on the podium may not have had a successful race. They didn't execute. They didn't reach their potential. They've made some mistakes along the way. Yeah, they showed up fast because they have some different skills that they carry along in their bodies. But who executed well? Who overcome adversity? Who avoided adversity because they made right decisions? That's a successful race. 100 people can show up. 100 bibs can show up. They can all be a winner that day. And that's what's beautiful about racing and about trail running, is we can all win. We can all win on the same day. And there's not very many sports that allow you to win because you're competing against the trail, yourself, and adversity. And that's another reason I like trail running.
Those are beautiful answers. You think about it, like Scott, you talk about
Cheering
the intrinsic to extrinsic values. I am with you. Like, the best races that I've ever run, they're not finish times. They were all about the experience, and you know what? Yep. And that's what it's all about. And well, maybe this kind of goes into number 6 here.
I segued purposely. We're very, very talented here at TRN. We knew what was coming. What do you got?
Yeah. This one's tune in. Tune into music. Listen to audiobooks. Listen to podcasts. Listen to anything, and be surprised.
What did we say that day? Did you listen to our answers there? I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that one. but I'll say something on tune in, so I won't forget it. Write yours down, Scott. And that's how we've talked about it countless times on the podcast, listening to your body, listening to the rhythm of your feet, tune into your breathing, tune in to the the conversation, a positive conversation in your head, maybe the people around you. There's just tune in to the good, because there's a lot there. You can really only concentrate on one thing at a time. And if you focus just on the bad, well, guess what? That's all you hear. So find something, fixate on it, and enjoy it and embrace it, because with our sport, it's going to be fleeting. It's not going to be around forever. So, and it'll come back, it'll wax and wane. We talked about that earlier, but that's tune in. And whether it's a book, and if that distracts you, good. Just enjoy your run. That's why we do it. Enjoy the experience and find out ways you can enjoy it. So tune in to what you're doing and what you love. So I see that as tune in.
I'm going to spin it a little bit and say tune out.
Big mistake, Scott. Big mistake.
When we go on runs, we typically don't have social media in front of us. We don't have our email in front of us. We don't have the phone calls. And that is the time where you can, if you want to get corny and say meditate, you can do that. But I think even when you're running, I mean, Don and I, one of the things I just love about running with Don is he and I, have work in businesses, and we share with each other what troubles or what challenges we're having within our business that we're trying to solve. And just by talking, he doesn't know anything about my business except for what I've told him. I don't know anything about his business except for what he's told me. But we listen to each other. We have a conversation, and I don't know if it's the extra blood flow that's going to the brain or lack thereof, but we come up with solutions or questions that can help us come up with solutions. And I think that that's something that we're missing in today's society. If you're traveling from your house to your work, you turn on the radio and you're listening to the garbage, that's on the radio, whether it's music. I mean, I love music, don't get me wrong, or the local talk radio, and listening to, all the negative that's out there. I have a great relationship with my manager at work, and I said, you know what? I may not start my work at this time every morning, but know that if I didn't, I was out on a run, and I'm probably becoming a more effective employee because I'm out on that run. And he completely supports that. So I think that tuning out, giving yourself permission to put aside the distractions and focus on what's really important. And that's really where you get to when you're on a run. All the minutia, the stuff that's not important, that kind of floats away, and you're stuck with the things that are most important for that given day.
Scott, I think I like your answer better than I liked my answer, and I thought I was the first to go and had the opportunity to get the good one out there. But that was good.
Well,
Scott,
I think you've said that before, Don. I just stole it.
That you were good.
and I think Scott might have found the show notes, because that was number 7. So you tune in
exactly.
and tune out. So it was perfect. So
see,
a great segue.
We may not have learned, consciously what the 9.5 rules were, but subconsciously we know what they were, and it's been leading us down this path.
The correct path, absolutely. Well, number 8 talks about wander. It says, leave your house with no particular plan in place.
Oh.
So I'll touch with one thing, is because I think when we exchanged emails, I think Don wrote back by saying, just like a good trail run, we're just going to show up and run. And I'm like, that's fantastic, because maybe like Mark and I, being new podcasters, trying to figure this out, we were writing all kinds of stuff down, trying to figure out. And I'm like, that's a piece of information there. Maybe just show up every now and then and just exist. What do you think about that?
I'm gonna start, Don. When you said that, the first thing that popped to my mind is Courtney DeWalter. We've had her on our podcast a number of times, and the thing that I've always been impressed by and inspired by, she doesn't have a coach. She doesn't have a training plan that she will say she has. I believe her. She probably doesn't. She leaves her house in the morning not knowing how far she's going to go, what route she's going to go, and she does it all by feel. What am I going to do today? I'm going to push my body to do this, and the plan when she leaves the door may be altered out on the run. And I think that that is such a great gift that she has, a superpower that Courtney has, is the ability to listen to her body and to push it when she knows she has to push it, and knows when to lay off and take the breaks, like rule number 2 or whatever that was. And I think that's what makes her such a great, successful athlete in all that she does.
I didn't think you were going there, Scott. I thought you were going to go, go with.
Where was I going to go?
Here's my prediction, and I'm glad you left it for me. And maybe that's just you being kind, because you knew I needed this one. So, of showing up just ready just to have relaxed, ready to have a discussion on a podcast.
Yeah.
We write down 4 bullet points, and many times we don't even get to all 4. Maybe we just get to the first 2, because we just participate in the conversation. We just listen. And when you listen, questions just pop into your mind. And I started the podcast and I said, when you have a partner, you can let that person ask their question and pull back and just listen and think and let something come to you and write down that thought so it doesn't escape you, because there's so many parts moving around. But just having the confidence not to go through a list, ask question number 6. I think you're 6. No, I was going to ask 6. And conversations, lose their way. And true organic conversations happen naturally, and they just come to you. And the next question that presented itself was the right question. And it's the same when everybody else was thinking as they're listening. And they go, if you're listening to a podcast, I would ask this, or I wonder, I'd like him to expand or her to expand on that. Well, you can't do that with a list of questions and checking things off. You just have to have confidence in your partner. You have to have confidence in the content provider, your guest, that they're going to be deep and they're going to have something. And we've been fortunate to ask the right people, apparently. And then just let the conversation happen naturally, and they turn out to be good. And you don't need any more than 4 bullet points, So just a thought. And Scott, if I had a golden nugget, I would have dropped it right there. That was a nugget.
That sounded pretty good to me. I think that should count as a nugget, right?
Yeah, it counts as a nugget.
So for any of those folks at home that have been keeping track, we're at number 9 now. And what this is, and as I follow the list of questions.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it's appropriate. It was it was us that came up with the 9.5 questions, right?
And I don't think this one has to do with hydrating too much, but it is stop regularly on the run. Look around. You'll be amazed at the little things that look back at you.
Oh, I have one, Don.
Go.
And Don reminds me of this frequently because he likes to bug me and I like to bug him. So the year that I ran Western States, I was not in good shape for the last half of that race. It was I was just in a bad. I was a nut job, and we were coming up a trail that we had run hundreds of times. It's probably within the last 2-3 miles of the race, and it's the sun had come back up and it was beating down on us, and we're making it up this hill, and I was, quote unquote, I thought I was running. Don was probably just walking backwards. I don't know what he was doing, but he said, "Hey, have you ever noticed that big rock up there?" He was going so slow because he was going my pace that he was looking around at this trail that we've run hundreds of times. And he goes, "Hey, have you ever noticed that rock?" And, me being in the poor position I said, "You'll have to show it to me next week," because my head was down. I was looking at my feet. I was in a bad place. And I think that is a great example of stopping and smelling the roses, or running with someone that's a lot slower than you.
I do. I called out that rock just a few weeks back. I said, "Look at that rock, Scott." It's kind of, when you go down a trail and something just pops out, that every time we go by this, you have to say that. So I like to remind him of that piece.
He reminds me, he goes, "Hey, do you ever see that rock, Scott?" And I go, "Yeah, I've seen it once or twice."
I remember that rock. Oh,
yeah.
No, I know exactly what you mean, though, because Todd follows me on Strava, and he can tell when I've been running a little bit too fast because my heart rate is, going quite high, and so he encourages me to slow down to about 140 beats per minute. And so when I do that, I think one of the days right after, I was like, I was looking at the trees. I run through a cemetery pretty regularly, and just there's beauty in there that you just don't typically notice when you're, focused on running and your breath and whatnot. But when you're just slowing down, you just really soak in things and see the beauty in the world, right? So
we're so lucky, aren't we, Mark?
we are
to be out there.
Yeah.
We are so lucky. We should enjoy it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
this brings us to the last one.
Sorry, go ahead.
The
half one.
What are your thoughts on? That's the half. Right? I'm just kidding. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
I drew a blank. I don't have anything.
Well, I think it dovetails perfectly into the ending of number 9. But this one is, remember, this isn't a job. It's running. It's supposed to be fun. It's not your duty. It's not an obligation. It's your life at that moment. That's maybe a great way to end on it too. Like, what does that mean on the podcasting world and in your trail running experiences?
Yeah, I think we missed a little bit of that on the podcasting piece. So we'll have to bring it in on this last one. Go ahead, Scott. You were leaning forward with something to say.
Well, I just finished reading a book, and it's on my phone. I was listening to it while I was running. And one of the end pieces said, we as humans are built or designed to think of the past, reflect on the past, and think about the potential or the scenarios in the future. We're always looking at the past, always looking at the future. And it takes a very conscious, deliberate effort to think about the present. But if you think about the present, that's where you'll find joy. Yep. If you're thinking about the past and, the good things that happened or the bad things that happened and ruminating it, oh, I wish I would have done that. Or, oh yeah, I remember the glory days when I was playing football in high school, or thinking about the future and what possibly can happen, and fixated on that and not concentrating on the present, I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so I would say that's one of the things that trail running can bring, at least when I'm out there running. If I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, it's usually that small little rock that catches my toe and bam, I'm on my face. So you have to be paying attention to what's happening in the present.
Stay in the moment. Yeah. I love
so
that.
I've got a view on this, both running and podcasting. I'll start with running because that's the easier one for me. And that is that I think about it when I'm out there. Some of these runs can be long, and you define your own long, whether it's a mile or 100 miles. It doesn't matter because it's your day and your definition. That you can't do something hard all day. If you start reaching deep and you start suffering and you start working too hard, to your point, Todd, if the Strava is going to tell a story, this person cannot hold this all day. That you can't do something hard. If you wanted to go all day, you can't go hard all day because the body just can't do it. There's limitations and physiological limitations, or where you can't carry that type of level of exertion all day. So back off. You're supposed to enjoy what you're doing. It's supposed to be fun. Running does not have to be hard. It shouldn't be hard. We've defined it as hard from the football field. Go take a lap, go out there.
Punishment.
It's hard. Running is hard. Running doesn't have to be hard. Go out there and give yourself permission to enjoy the run. Give yourself permission to enjoy it. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to hike that hill. Enjoy yourself and get out there and just have fun, because people that are having fun show up the next day. People that are having fun aren't pushing themselves so hard they're looking for injury. And longevity is about enjoying what you're doing, both physically and psychologically. So you can't do long things that are hard. That was not a good summary.
Hard things long.
There you go. That's right. And anybody that completed that next sentence, I'll leave that to you because I'm not going to say it on this podcast. Now,
It's okay. Tito will catch that. So it's a.
Oh, he'll get it, Tito. Hey, and Tito, don't go to our podcast and give us 1 star.
Our podcast and give us a negative review.
You stay right here. This is their property. Okay, this is their list. Okay, and then with the podcast, so many times that where Scott and I are trying to think of an idea or try to when we're done with it, we kind of look at each other and we think, you know what, that was a good one. We had fun. We enjoyed that one. It just kind of flowed. Scott will say, he'll call me out and say, at the end of a show, I'll say, I think that was the best one ever. I love that one. When you get excited about it going out, it's like, hey, when's this go out? 2 weeks? I wish this could go out this week. I want people to hear this one. I want them to share in what we just experienced. So I think having fun on a run, enjoying a conversation and excited about sharing it, I think that's the right place to be. So that's how I relate both those, trail and running. Scott put his finger up. That was something.
In all fairness, Don's only said that was our best episode ever 667 times.
Well, and you know what though, like throughout this, and I'm going to go back, I'll pull this together in the show notes. There's a lot of Don nuggets. So we're going to have to come up with a new name for Don. Like, look what you've evolved. And like, Scott, you finally wore Don down and he's given these nuggets of wisdom. It's fantastic. And they're
all Don nuggets. If it came out of my mouth, it came out of Don's mouth at some point previously.
There you go.
We were just recounting a story about how we started the podcast, and not on this podcast, but he and I were just talking, and he started telling the story, and I went, "That wasn't you. That was me. That was me." And he goes, "Scott, no, that was me." I mean, this was 14 years ago, and I honestly. I could swear 99% of it was me, but he could say the same thing. So it's actually kind of funny.
And the thing is, there was only one of us that were right, and we're going to have to go to the Y and have the Y pitch in and find out who's correct here.
Right.
That's hilarious. Well, I mean, with that, I have to say, just really appreciate you both taking the time to join us today. An hour and a bit went by so quickly with you both. So as Todd was indicating, so many nuggets came out of this. Lots of learnings for me as a new runner that I can apply to each of my runs going forward. I still haven't committed to a race or anything yet. That's kind of my situation right now, where I just enjoy getting out there to do it. But Todd is still pointing me in that direction at some point. So we'll see what happens. But
he's taunting you with all those bibs behind him and medals. I mean, he doesn't let you forget, does he?
I know. All I got is this bird, and that's it. So for those who are viewing us on YouTube, they're seeing that. But for those,
can either you can join up to a race, or I'm going to try to convince him to crew me at some probably epic ultra that I'll throw my name in for, and I'll try to do it in a few years. But you know what? Hey, yeah, go ahead.
Mark, have you ever been to a race and like worked at an aid station?
No, I hear.
Don't sign up. No. Don't sign up for a race. Just find one nearby and go volunteer. And then I guarantee you're going to sign up for a race.
Ooh.
Once you go out there and you see what people are going through, and the humanity and what people can accomplish, you're going to go, I need me some of that.
Yeah. So is
and that's when the sign up's going to happen.
So it's the prime spot to request an aid station near the back end of the race too, just so you can see people, at the very end.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
Really, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And one that you're free to bring your own aid to, so you can maybe bring some Fireball, maybe some beer.
Is it bad if I'm sitting there like having a slice of pizza while they're having whatever's on the table, or I'll have to learn. I don't know.
I guarantee you will not be doing that. You'll be offering your pizza to the person. Yeah. You'll see them and you'll go, they need this more than I do.
Wish I had more pepperoni, right?
Well, guys, where could the listeners find more about Trail Runner Nation, and what are you excited for? You got something that's upcoming? What's on your calendars?
One thing you can do is search out some of Tito's quotes that he has. You'll probably run right into our show.
Tito.
Yeah.
Trailrunnernation.com. We also just recently tried to, we're streaming, or not streaming, but releasing our episodes on YouTube. We haven't figured out how to edit video yet, so they're the unedited versions. And we do have, and I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, Freeman.
I don't even know we had a cat in a bag. What do you got?
We actually have something that's really exciting that we've been working on for actually a couple years, that we think is kind of a give back to the community, something that's going to benefit the community. And it is called the Trail Triage app. It's going to be an app for an iPhone, an app for Android. And it's basically a medical assist in your pocket. So either you as a runner, your pacer, your crew, if you've ever paced or crewed and you see your runner come in and they've been throwing up, they can't keep anything down, and you're going, what do I do for them? It's a very simple to use app.
I love it.
That all you do is you look at it, has an icon of somebody throwing up, you click on it, and it will say, what are some of the typical causes? What are some solutions? And then if you have all that, you don't need cell coverage or anything for, but if you want to learn more about it and you do have cellular connectivity, you can click on it and it will give you a lot more resources to help out. So there's, I'm trying to think, Don, there's probably 12 symptoms that we have right now on there. We haven't released it yet. Although you probably can download it if you searched out Trail Runner Nation. Searched out Trail Triage. For the iPhone. It's not available. I don't think it's in the Android store yet, but that's something that we're really excited about. We had some friends that came that have helped us come up with the idea, and we have another trail friend that has been the developer and working on the app side of it.
And like in true Trail Runner Nation fashion, Scott and I have very little knowledge, and so it's not our content that you'll find there. It's vetted by medical directors and physicians and some real talent that's out there that's reviewed it and contributed, and they've done an enormous amount of work on it. So all the information there is really, really valid and strong.
We haven't even mentioned this on our podcast yet. So you guys have the news break, I may get my hand slapped because we're telling about it. We may break the internet or break the app because people are listening to this and trying to download it.
Now, is there a function that goes directly to Dr. Mark as well?
There should be a hotline,
right?
We should add that. You can actually speed dial Dr. Mark. That's a great idea.
So that's a free one for you. Okay.
It's a genius idea, because you know what? I think a lot of the new entrants to trail running and maybe thinking of their first ultra or trail race, sometimes they worry about that. They just, they're going to experience a lot of stuff on the trail. And this just gives them one less thing to worry about and points their crew or themselves into like some really good solutions. I love it. This is exciting. Thanks for sharing that, guys.
It's going to be free. It's always going to be free. It's just something that we thought there could be some benefit out there.
It's wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Scott. We truly appreciate you allowing us to follow you on the trails. We're the trail newbies. We're having fun. We're having a great time, and it speaks volumes to the spirit of you guys, what you bring to the trail running community, and the give back that you give. And just thank you. As for newbies, we totally appreciate you, and we still want you to be out there blazing those trails like Mark said earlier.
Absolutely. And we're still not worthy. So thank you
again. We're not worthy.
We have been the recipients of so much goodness. If we can give back a 10th, we'll have done our job.
Lex, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys, for having us on. We really appreciate it. And it was
a fun discussion. Thank you.
We were surprised that anybody wanted to have us on, so we thank you for it.
Awesome. Take care.
Thank you.